The May 28th, 2026 edition of the City Plan Board. Ms. McMullen, if you will call the roll, please.
Alrighty. Robert Ackerman.
Here.
Jamie Bell.
Here.
Tina Certain is absent. Robert Murmer.
Here.
Jane Morosky, our new member.
Here.
Welcome.
Joshua Ney.
Here.
Jason Sanchez.
Here.
And Stephanie Sutton.
Here.
All right, you have a quorum.
Great. Do we have a motion to adopt the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, passes unanimously. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes of, I guess this would be this would actually be 2 months ago because we didn't have a meeting last month, but approval of the previous meeting's minutes.
So moved.
We have a second?
Second.
I think we're going to get one there for a second. All those in favor? Aye. Passes unanimously. At this point in the meeting, we invite members of the public who have something to say about something that is not on the agenda, is not an agenda item. This would be your time to come up and say your piece. Alternatively, you could say nothing and we could have the time back and keep this show rolling. So, all right, looks like we're going to keep rolling. So, Ms. McMullen, if you could read the first item, please.
Yes. So the first item on the agenda is 2026-359 Gainesville Baptist Church Special Use Permit LD25-000055 with a presentation from Allison Pager. So for tonight, since we do have a new board member, and welcome again, and thank you for serving on the board, I'll be giving a little bit of an additional preamble for the item types on the agenda tonight. First up is a special use permit, and it's just a good opportunity to talk very briefly about kind of what the purpose of the petition type is and what the purview of the board is. So for the special use permit, it is a planning petition type that the board has final approval on. So it's not something you make a recommendation on. You'll take a vote to approve with conditions, or deny. And you'll hear from staff on what the recommendation is. The way that I generally like to think about special uses they are a use that the Land Development Code has established has some degree of compatibility generally with other uses in the zoning district, but could use potentially additional review or may require special conditions or considerations given the particular location or characteristics of the site and surrounding properties and things like that. So sometimes you will see staff recommending conditions on the special use permit, and staff will go through the review criteria with you on how to consider approving the use. I also did provide you a printout behind your agendas of the Land Development Code section that outlines the purpose and the review criteria and review procedures for special use permits. So that is the background on that kind of generally. I'll turn it over to Allison Pager to present this item.
Good evening, board chair and board members. Thank you for having me this evening. My name is Allison Pager. I'm a planner in the Department of Sustainable Development. I'm before you today to present the Gainesville Baptist Church special use permit request identified by petition number LD25-000055. This is a quasi-judicial petition. The applicant, Mr. and Mrs. Kirkland, along with Big Hammer Construction, along with Pastor Noble and his wife with Gainesville Baptist Church, are also in attendance this evening as well. So before jumping into the information of this request, this is just a short summary of the petition timeline and public notice requirements being met per the LDC requirements. The applicants and owners had their pre-application meetings with staff. They hosted a neighborhood workshop. The submitted petition was reviewed internally by staff and is now before the City Plan Board for review as the final decision authority. And this is just the images of those requirements being met for the neighborhood workshop, and also in preparation for the City Plan Board meeting. So for this petition, it's for subject parcel, which is approximately 1.98 acres and is identified as parcel number 06415-002-041. It's located at 3570 Northwest 16th Boulevard. I'm just going to use the next few slides to show the area, and then I'll come back to that first slide to talk about the request. So the property is the location of the existing Gainesville Baptist Church, and it has been for several decades now. This overhead imagery shows the subject property and the general location. It's bordered on all sides by residential properties. Primarily, they're all single-family dwellings. It is fronted by Northwest 16th Boulevard, which is a major roadway, and it offers the only access point to the property. The current site has 2 existing buildings, and that existing entry point has a long driveway entrance that leads back to the parking lot. And then just a quick summary of the existing zoning map and future land use map to show that the designations are SF single family for both, and that the adjacent and surrounding properties have the same designations. And this is just a summary of kind of what was just discussed of what's surrounding the property. It's largely single family as the use for everything that's surrounding this property. So for this request for the special use permit, it's to allow for a proposed new sanctuary building at an existing place of religious assembly. For additional context, there's also a related permit, a minor land development review permit that has been submitted and is reviewed separately for the subject parcel. For context, minor land development reviews do not require board review. Those go through an administrative review process. That minor land development review proposes a new sanctuary building of approximately 5,263 square feet with a proposed capacity that we'll see in more detail later on, along with minor site improvements for like stormwater, utility connections, and some parking improvements. These align with the information that was submitted as part of the special use permit submittal. For this slide, I just wanted to highlight the purpose of why the special use permit is needed and the applicable land development code sections that were used during the review. So the subject property is in the single family zoning district where places of religious assembly as a principal use require a special use permit approval. The use is further regulated and impacted by dimensional standards from the single family zoning district, dimensional and lot standards for places of religious assembly as a principal use, and development compatibility standards for properties that are adjacent to single family zoning, where there's an impact to things like height. And then this is going to be seen more as we look at the preliminary site plan. So as part of the special use permit submittal, the applicants have provided a preliminary site plan to better show this proposed new sanctuary building. And just to note again, the actual review of the construction of the new sanctuary building goes through the separate land development review process. But the proposal of the new building and the use of the building is reviewed using the criteria of the land development code and for the use itself. A couple of things to highlight with this plan, starting with the existing conditions. So there are 2 buildings that already exist on the parcel. So there's a building right here and a building right here. So those are the 2 existing ones. This is the existing parking lot. Back here is largely like a grassy area. And then there's existing sheds along the property and an existing dumpster enclosure. And then where the new sanctuary building is proposed is at the front of the property. And then this is that long driveway that is accessed off of Northwest 16th Boulevard. So here are some close-ups of that site plan to just cover a few things real quick. The first thing is with the proposed new sanctuary building. One thing we look at is the setbacks because places of religious assembly as that principal use have stricter setbacks than what the normal single-family zoning district setbacks would have. As a reminder, that was seen on this slide. So the setbacks are more intense than what the single-family ones are. So it was looked at for meeting those setbacks, which it is. And then we also looked at the proposed changes to the parking, where additional ADA spots are proposed to be added. The existing parking lot that is there serves the needs of the church, and that was reviewed in relation to our parking requirements in the Land Development Code. And finally, just the few other minor changes of the existing dumpster and where it's being relocated to and how it's being screened, along with the relocation of the existing shed for meeting Land Development Code requirements. And then this part is to talk about development compatibility for being adjacent to single-family zoning, which is largely impacted by the height requirements. So when adjacent to single-family zoning, there's the restrictions of the 36 feet maximum height and the 3 stories, as seen on this slide, and the elevations that were provided as a preliminary drawing do show that those are being considered and are being met preliminary for their proposed new sanctuary building. So those are all being considered in this proposed new building for their place of religious assembly. Okay. So this petition was reviewed using the criteria outlined in section 30-3.24 of the Land Development Code and the corresponding sections of the comprehensive plan for the city of Gainesville. The criteria shown on this slide are explored in more detail in the backup and staff report. I just have a few points I wanted to expand on, and we'll use a couple of the slides for. In terms of compatibility, the proposed sanctuary building will expand the use. The main function of the building will be to serve as the new main sanctuary space. That main sanctuary space is currently located in one of the other 2 smaller buildings that are on the parcel. And that will then transfer over to this new building. So this proposed expansion is found to be compatible with the existing land use pattern and future uses of the comprehensive plan. For access and mobility, access is established and existing off of Northwest 16th Boulevard. No further access points are proposed to be established, so that ingress and egress will remain as is. And new pedestrian pathways will be proposed in the land development review level with more pedestrian pathways to connect the building to, sidewalks, parking as needed, which aligns with our comprehensive plan. For impacts of hours and operations, the applicants did confirm that the scheduled hours of operations and activities are not proposed to change with this request. So this is found to not create an adverse impact to adjacent properties. For harmonious screening and buffering, for this part, staff, including myself, the planning manager, and our urban forestry inspector, went and did a site visit with the applicant and the church officials to evaluate the existing screening and buffering. We included all of those site visit photos in the backup. I tried to create a slide to try to encompass what the existing screening and buffering looks like. So I will try my best to explain what this is, but how this is trying to correlate is how this property has 3 property lines that is shared with single-family residential properties. And each of these color-coded sections represent a portion of screening that is shared with these residential properties. And they correlate to a picture of what that screening looks like. So staff went out to the site to evaluate what this existing screening was, and to see if it met current code requirements, because it has been an existing church with this existing screening, and to evaluate the impact of this new proposed building, if that screening would still provide enough screening, basically. So we felt confident after going on site that the screening was compatible and able to provide enough screening to serve its purpose for this request. So there is fencing and there's some vegetation, some landscaping. Our urban forestry inspector, Chelsea, came out with us and also provided her expertise as we evaluated all sides of the property. So yeah, again, more pictures are in the backup if needed, but we were able to see all sides of the fence. And something else to add to that I thought was good to know is in the neighborhood workshop that the applicants had. They did note that a lot of their neighbors attended, but one of the neighbors that attended mentioned one of the fences along their property and had talked about working together to update that fence, and that is something that the applicant and the church worked with them on. So that was something great that came out of that. So I think there's definitely a great relationship seen there, and it shows how that screening and buffering is taken seriously by the church and the applicant. And the final criteria is about the specific applicable criteria to the actual use. So this is for the place of religious assembly. Our land development code does have criteria for places of religious assembly. So for this one, there are a couple of criteria that apply. B through D of this section are specifically about accessory uses like daycare, schools, things of that nature. So in the review process, we did confirm that those accessory uses are not proposed to occur with this request and do not currently exist with the church use. So those criteria do not apply. The applicable criteria are under A of this section, which is building code capacity and the minimum setbacks, which we've already been over. So for the building code capacity, this is a requirement about, it's kind of based on the capacity of the structure based off of the acreage of the parcel for the place of religious assembly. So this would apply to this new main sanctuary space based off of the definitions in our code, and it all ties back to the Florida Building Code in terms of calculations of that occupancy. So this has been evaluated, and this part kind of leads into what staff's recommendation is going to be. This is just a picture showing the parking lot, and this picture shows if you're looking at basically where the proposed building would be placed. But this leads into staff's recommendation is connected to the point about the building code capacity. So this week we've talked a little bit more about the code capacity. So because we've had the special use permit where the information that was submitted to us with that submittal was the number that was shown was 188 persons for the capacity. Again, the acreage for this parcel is 1.98. So how that works out with the code requirement is that capacity, the max capacity would be 198. With the land development review that's currently being looked at, and will continue to be looked at through that separate process, that number that is proposed there is still in review. So staff wants to recommend a condition, which this does differ from what's in the backup. We would like to recommend adding this condition in just to add clarity to help guide the next steps of this process based off of what the decision is tonight, to help the applicants through the next steps to know for sure what that max capacity is that will have to be met, because it is a requirement for places of religious assembly to have to meet that requirement, just to provide hopefully clarity to why we have recommended this as a condition. So that condition would be per Land Development Code section 30-5.22A1, capacity for the place of religious assembly is limited to 198 or less as determined by the Florida Building Code. And in addition to that, I have talked with our chief building plans examiner in the building department about, how building occupancy is calculated and, at what level that's done. And also he's also on the land development review process and has left comments about the occupancy. So it's being looked at the different levels. So I think everyone's on the same page about that. And this type of condition in the recommendation would just help guide through next steps. So based on that is staff's recommendation, and I'm happy to help answer any questions and if there's anything from that.
Thank you for a very thorough and well explained presentation. Ms. Bell.
Thank you. Just to further clarify the occupancy thing, so are you saying that the land development code may still continue to change or be updated so that number theoretically could be in flux, and that's why you want to condition it to set the number now? Or is it because you want to offer them 10 more capacity than was in the backup?
Oh, no, sorry. For clarity, it's kind of stems from in the past week, there's been some confusion on staff's end because of different proposals or maybe not proposals, but different versions of a floor plan we've seen where the exact capacity number has been a little different. And we just hope that providing this as a condition confirms, based on the code requirement, this is what the maximum number is. So when considering the land development review, further like past an SUP approval, if that's what happens tonight, they'd know like for sure the 198 is what the maximum number is based on the LDC requirement.
So the 198 is the max regardless because of the property size, but the actual occupancy cap may go down based on the building size when it's done. Is that kind of what you're getting at? Like they can't.
Based on how they design it, it could go down. It just can't go above 198.
If I don't want to belabor the point, but is it necessary to have that condition if the land development code has the formula that states what it can be? Like, is it necessary to say that to have that condition built in so explicitly? Like, would that complicate things if the land development code were to change in the future to adjust that number?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I can help answer that too. Yeah. Sorry, Allison. We did have this exact conversation because, yeah, we always question, is it necessary to put a special condition, especially if it's specifically outlined in the code? I think, like Allison said, it's mostly just for clarity so that there's an easy reference to go back to basically say we did the calculation based on the acreage. This is the maximum number. But even if you didn't place the condition, it would still be the same number to that point. Okay. It's really just for clarity, and it'll be something that goes in the final letter of approval, so it's just sort of like a quick reference as to here's the maximum number.
Okay. I just say my only hesitation is like locking in a set number in case the code changes later and the calculation changes rather than just referencing the code itself, so you have a place to go back to, but...
Right. Well, we know the land development code is not going to change anytime soon. Potentially the building code could change, but it doesn't seem likely. But that's a good point.
Okay, that was all I had. Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Seeing none, does the applicant have a presentation as well, or? Okay. Fair enough. Well, if any members of the public would like to speak on this particular item, this would be the time to come up and speak to it. Otherwise, we'll bring it back to the board for more discussion and a motion. All right. Do we have a motion?
I'd be inclined to make a motion, but I'm leaning towards not having a condition. But does anyone else have an opinion?
I agree with you in that it seems redundant and unnecessary. I worry it would be limiting, and they'd have to come back to the board to change something if the land development code were to change in the future. That's all. I mean, it's unlikely that it'll become much of an issue, but it also doesn't seem to be a real need to put that cap on there since the cap is built by the formula.
Okay. Well, I'll make a motion to approve LD25-000055 Gainesville Baptist Church special use permit with no conditions.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, passes unanimously. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Ms. McMullen, if you could read the next item of the agenda.
Yes. So the next two items are both right-of-way vacations. The next item is 2026-360 Dorothy Holmes Right-of-Way Vacation for a property south of Northeast 8th Avenue between Northeast 18th Street and Northeast 9th Street, Terrace LD22-000066. I did also provide a printout for all of you for the right-of-way vacation code section that talks about the purpose, the review criteria, and the review procedures. So just to kind of give a brief summary of what a right-of-way vacation is. It's another type of planning petition that it allows for the city to essentially revert back to adjacent properties, land that had been formerly dedicated, usually by a subdivision plat, for use for some sort of public right-of-way. The city plan board is advisory on these types of requests, so you will make a recommendation to the city commission. After you make your recommendation, the city staff will work with the city attorney's office to get an ordinance drafted. It'll then be presented to the city commission, and they'll make a final determination based on the review criteria and also consider staff recommendation and plan board recommendation. So there are particular review criteria to consider with this. Staff will let you know what staff review found with these review criteria and go through the necessary criteria and let you know what the staff recommendation is. So I will turn it over to Ari Rabinovich, planner with the planning department.
Thank you, Brittany. And good evening, Plan Board. My name is Ari Rabinovich. I'm a planner with the Department of Sustainable Development. The item before you is LD22-000066. This is a right-of-way vacation by Dorothy Holmes. So some context about this right-of-way vacation. The right-of-way is located south of Northeast 8th Avenue between Northeast 18th Street and Northeast 19th Terrace. It's approximately 0.5 acres in size, and all of the surrounding land uses are single-family. All the surrounding zoning districts are single-family. So the request is to vacate that right-of-way as shown in this map. And for a little bit of context about this particular section of the right-of-way, you can see that it has been undeveloped and wooded for over 20 years. It does not facilitate any kind of through access for the block or for any of the private property owners adjacent to the right-of-way. And so this request is brought forward by an abutting property owner for the purposes of consolidating their land holdings so that they can redevelop the land that is adjacent to their own. And there are affidavits signed by all of the other abutting property owners as required by the code and shown here. So this is just the land survey showing what the right-of-way is that's to be vacated down here, and all of these are the abutting property owners. So with right-of-way vacations, like Brittany mentioned, we are required to review against a specific set of criteria specified in 30-3.41 in the Land Development Code, and the transportation mobility element of the comprehensive plan also specifies some criteria that we're required to review against. So staff review have found that this request does meet those criteria, so we'll start with the Land Development Codes. Basically that this is a right-of-way that is not connected to the city street system. It is consistent with the transportation mobility element portion of the comprehensive plan. It does not bring the block out of compliance with minimum block size requirements. There is no access to private property occurring through this right-of-way, so it would not deny any access to private property. There could be marginal improvements to public safety resulting from the redevelopment of this section of land that is currently vacant and unused. There is no connectivity for pedestrians or vehicular traffic, and there is no negative impact to the design and character of the area from this request, as this is a vacant and undeveloped plot of wooded land. So then looking at the transportation mobility element, these are the criteria that we're required to consider. There is no reasonable foreclosure of bicycle or pedestrian use or for non-motorized access to adjacent land uses. There is no transect zoning abutting this right-of-way. And then this is not a street, so we don't need to consider that criteria either. So those are the conditions that we consider with right-of-way vacations. So with that, staff does recommend approval of LD22-000066. I thank you for your time, and I'm here if you have any questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rabinovich. Dr. Murmur.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So you said that there are no streets that are being vacated?
Oh, yeah, this is just a wooded lot that doesn't actually have any street connectivity. It might look like on the map that there is a street that kind of leads into this lot here, Northeast 7th Place. But so it's more like a paper street. Public Works has left a comment on the review, basically requiring them to leave a cutout here that would enable a turnaround point if the street is developed leading up to that right of way, but it's not a street at present.
So on the page 2 of the staff report, it does look like, and if I compare this to Google Maps, part of Northeast 19th Street
Yes.
would be vacated.
That was my mistake. So looking back at the actual request, you can see here that 19th Street continues down this way. It actually is a little bit shorter than that, so the portion of 19th Street that I illustrated in the staff report is not included. This is the official survey provided by the applicant.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Sorry about that.
Ms. Bell?
Thank you. It's not abundantly clear to me who is going to get this property.
So the right-of-way that will be vacated will be distributed between the abutting landowners. And so if this goes to the city commission, the landowners will be responsible for recording the new parcels that are increased in size as a result of the right-of-way vacation. But so you can see like each one of these parcels here will be distributed evenly, the portions of the right-of-way that abut their own property.
Okay.
So generally it goes, it's sort of like split half and half between properties on either side. I don't remember for this one, I don't know if you have like an overview map or anything, but if it goes both left and right on this one, but usually it's on either side.
Yeah, so the parcel down here will get this back half basically, and then the parcels to the north will get portions of the other half.
Okay. And there's no existing utilities down this way, like backyard wastewater or anything like that? Like, will an easement have to be maintained?
I'm not entirely sure if an easement will be needed. I think that will depend on the development. If and when it does occur, all of that will be reviewed by GRU reviewers, and so they'll make it clear to the property owners if they would need to record an easement on development.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Right, any other questions from the board? If not, I think Clay's like the only member of the public here that's not city staff. I don't suppose you have an opinion on this that you want to express. Okay. I threw it out there to the public. The public has rejected, so we'll bring it back to the board for a motion. Perhaps, maybe. Or discussion?
Move approval of petition LD22-000066.
Do we have a second? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously.
All
Thank
right.
you very much. You got
Yeah,
another one?
I got one more.
Oh, man, all right.
Yes.
You don't want to go through the motions of just going back and forth?
So the next petition is 2026-361 Fifth Avenue Alley Right-of-Way Vacation for property south of Northwest 5th Avenue between Northwest 13th Street and Northwest 12th Drive. Same type of petition that you just considered, a different location with a presentation from R.A. Rabinovich.
Thank you. R.A. Rabinovich, planner with the Department of Sustainable Development. This is petition LD26-000022. This is the 5th Ave Alley Right-of-Way Vacation. So this is a portion of the right-of-way located east of Northwest 13th Street and south of Northwest 5th Avenue between Northwest 13th Street and Northwest 12th Drive. It is approximately 0.4 acres with budding land uses of urban mixed use and a budding zoning of Transit Zone 8. So this is a request to vacate that portion of the right-of-way as shown in this map provided by the applicant. Some additional information for this right-of-way vacation. This has historically functioned as both a construction laydown lot or as parking for over 20 years, as you can see in this illustrated imagery. There is no through access for the block, and it is functionally an alley that dead ends. So this is a right-of-way vacation that would consolidate the land holdings for the property owner who holds all of the abutting parcels under singular ownership for the purposes of facilitating redevelopment in this transect zone area. And like I said, these are all held in common ownership by the applicant. This is the survey submitted by them. And same set of criteria that we're required to review against, section 30-3.41 in the Land Development Code and policy 10.2.1 of the Transportation Mobility Element. So this is a portion of the right-of-way that is disconnected from the city street system and does not provide any through access for pedestrians or vehicles. It is consistent with the code of the Transportation Mobility Element and does not negatively impact block size in bringing that block out of compliance with block size requirements. There would be no denial of private property access, particularly because this is a land holding under common ownership. There is marginal effects on public safety resulting from the redevelopment of this site. There is no impact to pedestrian or vehicular traffic uses, and emergency services and municipal services would need to be provided and would be reviewed under development plan review, as well as the necessity to locate any utilities and marginal improvements to the design and character of the area, as redevelopment would be required to come to compliance with the design standards of transect zoning. And with the transportation mobility element criteria, loss of this street would not reasonably foreclose foreseeable bicycle or pedestrian use. Development would be required to comply with access for transportation and for sidewalks requirements of the transect zoning. Would not foreclose any non-motorized access to adjacent land uses or transit stops. This is an alleyway that doesn't provide through access. And then this does abut transect zoning, so this would be beneficial in facilitating the construction of any high-density or mixed-use projects for residential or non-residential uses. Again, it's a transect zone, so for that redevelopment to occur, it would have to comply with the standards that enable that kind of development. And there is no reasonably foreseeable need for any type of transportation corridor in this area. It's right next to 5th Avenue and 13th Street. So with that, I do thank you for your time. Staff recommendation is for approval of LD26-000022. And I'm here with any questions as well as the applicant. So thank you.
Great, thank you, Mr. Rabinovich. Are there any questions from the board? That was so straightforward. I mean, usually this thing's lit up, and nothing. So, does the applicant have a presentation that he wants to give?
Good evening, Mr. Chair and board members. I'm Clay Swager with EDA. I don't have a formal presentation. I appreciate Ari doing a very nice job going through the review criteria. I would like to just put something on the overhead real quick just to give a little bit of context. It's hard to get good aerial photos of this area because things are changing so fast out there that if you look at Google Earth and Google Maps, it just shows these mixed-use projects are all under development. So this is a more up-to-date photo. So really this is a sort of a last property in an area that has seen a lot of infill redevelopment. Just wanted to give you these photos. You can see the area that's behind the old Mr. Good Bike property there. This is a view sort of facing west. It's really a dirt lot. It's been very functional in terms of being a construction laydown area for all these projects that are now full of residents. So this really is the last property in that area. It's all owned. That part of the block's all under one ownership. There is a small, I'd say about a third of the block still has a alley right-of-way designation, which is the nature of the request for the vacation. It doesn't have any physical improvements. It doesn't have any public purpose. It doesn't connect, doesn't provide bike transportation connectivity. Utilities are not in that area. So we do believe we meet the tests for the vacation of the right-of-way. And it will allow these folks that own the assemblage of properties to move forward with a project with the city if you would request to the commission to vacate this right-of-way. If you have any questions for me tonight, I'd be glad to answer them.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any questions from the board? Mr. Ackerman?
I just have a comment for Mr. Schwager. The buildings on the right have an ominous tilt to them.
That is just the camera angle.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, right.
I think that may have been, I don't think it's actually that that much of an angle in real life.
Assuming whatever gets built there will not be tilting like.
It's like the
Leaning
fishbowl
Tower of Pisa.
lens.
Dr. Murmur.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So if this alley's been used as a construction materials laydown area, once they start developing this, you said it was the last empty property in the area. Do we run the risk of very disruptive construction? Or, I mean, are there plans to find an alternative laydown area? 'Cause I know these projects can take a while, so.
The hardest project is always the last one, so they're going to have to be very creative with their construction laydown if they bring a project forward. I don't believe that this alley in any way would aid in construction laydown with a redevelopment project. They would probably have to build in a phased approach on that block. That's usually what you see in the urban areas when you have redevelopment. So we don't. There's no project yet. This is sort of pre-step one, if you will.
Right.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you all.
Well, normally I'd throw it to the public, but there's no public here, so we'll keep it here on the board for any discussion or a motion.
I'll make a
Sluggish
motion.
bunch today.
I'll make a motion to approve 2026-361 Fifth Ave Alley Right-of-Way Vacation for property south of Northwest Fifth Ave between 13th Street and 12th Drive, LD26-000022.
Do we have a second? Second. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, passes unanimously.
I don't want to be the only one making motions.
Thank you for making motions to this side of me. All right, Mr. Mullen, if you could read the next item.
Sure. All right, the last item on the agenda is a discussion item. So it's not a voting item tonight. It is an update for you all on the ImagineGNV comprehensive plan rewrite process that we have been working through. And you all have put a lot of time and effort into as well. So I'll start out with the update, and then a few members of our staff are here to walk through some additional details. We do want to pull the presentation up for this one. So kind of a quick upfront summary. So staff gave a presentation to the City Commission on May 14th at their General Policy Committee meeting as an update to the progress that's been made on this plan and where we're at with the timeline. Sort of the big update on this, I'll just give it to you in the beginning, is, as it relates to the timeline, is working around some state legislation, specifically Senate Bill 180, which has been in place, I think since last year now, possibly the year before, but It's been something that's been talked about by a lot of different local governments around Florida. But essentially, it prohibits local governments from proposing or adopting comprehensive plan or land development code amendments that are more restrictive or burdensome. So we've been working with the city attorney's office closely on this item, of course, and how it might affect the comprehensive plan rewrite that we've been going through. So we'll get into a little bit more details on kind of what we think the next steps should be at the May 14th General Policy Commission meeting, or the General Policy meeting. The city attorney provided some additional information on the legal perspective on this. And both staff and the city attorney's office are not recommending to send the final plan to the state at this point this year. And essentially what SB 180 would limit is making any changes that could be considered more burdensome or restrictive until the time kind of runs out on the clock that they've set, essentially, which is October of 2027, or unless changes are made in the next legislative session that might correct kind of the results of this legislation that, you know, I don't think people necessarily thought would have this impact or, you know, kind of be this broad of an application. But with all that being said, we still would like to let you know what work we've done on it since you all last heard about it. And, you know, you all had a very lengthy meeting back in January, I think it was, and went through and gave us a lot of feedback. We've gotten a lot of feedback from the public and had quite a few community meetings and things like that. So we do want to go through a brief version of what we presented to the commission on the 14th. And I do not have the clicker. I'm going to go through the first 3 slides, so I might just have to ask Patrick, or maybe Nate will do it for me, to go through the slides. So yeah, this is kind of just a brief version of what we talked to the commission about on the 14th. So we start out the presentation just by giving a bit of background and history. We wanted to let you know the summary of the engagement and outreach efforts. We'll talk about some crosswalk documents that have been put together comparing a few different versions. We did go through with the commission the chapter by chapter breakdown of the plan. We're not planning on doing that tonight. However, all of the updated documents are attached to your backup, and they are on the planning webpage. If you do want to go through and review it, and we're also happy to answer questions and whatnot. We'll briefly talk about the approach to the data and analysis, and then what the next steps will be for the process. Thanks, Nate. So just super brief on the background and history, and I think this is important, especially as we have a new plan board member, just to kind of remind us all of what the comp plan is and what it does. So the comprehensive plan, or as we sometimes call it, the comp plan, it's a state-mandated, legally binding document that guides decisions and investments affecting nearly every aspect of how the city manages itself. It's generally updated every 5 to 7 years in some way. The current comprehensive plan, the 2010 to 2020 plan, includes 14 plan elements represented by these icons that you see here on the screen. So in working with the plan that we have today, we've been working through a process over the past few years to kind of overhaul our existing document and give it new life, so to speak. So what we have done recently is to send a letter referred to as the EAR notification letter, the evaluation and appraisal report letter that's required to be sent to the state. For us, it was required to be sent by May 1st of this year, letting them know that we will be providing updates to the comprehensive plan. Once that letter is sent, we do have to adopt updates by April or within a year of sending the letter. So April 29th, 26th is our deadline to update the plan. Now this is, I'm sure the question that is coming up for you is how do we do that if we're not adopting anything until at least October of 27? What we plan on doing for the evaluation appraisal report process is to meet the statutory requirements, which are just to update the plan for making sure that it's in compliance with statute, essentially. So we would not propose to send the entirely redrafted plan to the state by April, but there are some specific items that we essentially need to clean up with the existing comprehensive plan by that time in order to keep things moving and to be able to continue to do comp plan updates. So we'd just be doing the requirements as specified by statute, and so we are in the process, and we'll be in the process of working on those things over the next year. I won't go too much into the detail on the timeline. We've talked about it a lot. As you can see, since 2021. Going through different stages. Most recently, what the commission had directed staff to do was to write the plan into a traditional, kind of back into the traditional comp plan format with goals, objectives, and policies. That's led us to the latest draft that we have today, which we are very proud of and have spent a lot of time on, and are very proud to present to you the results. So. With that, I will let Allison Pager go over the engagement and outreach efforts, which are largely in thanks to her, with support from staff, of course, but Allison has done tremendous work in this area. So let us know what that is, Allison.
Thanks. Hi again, Allison, planner with DSD. I think I get the fun part, engagement and outreach. This has been really fun to do, so I'm going to try my best to cover several years of involved and detailed engagement efforts within just a couple of slides, but feel free to stop me if you have any questions. So the early stages of ImagineGNV engagement are kind of encapsulated on this slide, which you guys have kind of seen a lot in the past, so I won't spend too much time on it, but it just looked a lot different than what our most recent engagement looked like. A lot of listening sessions, community cultivators, fellowships, conversations in a box, a lot of great feedback we got from these early stages of engagement. And then our engagement efforts since, December 2025 was these more recent efforts where we started the redrafting and reaching out for as much feedback as possible, really opening up the floodgates, trying to get a lot of that feedback from our neighbors, our community, to really influence what we were working on. It was kind of our priority to open up as many channels and make it as accessible as we could. So that came through in all these different ways that we see on the screen. And it was involving a lot of coordination with multiple people and groups, especially the community groups that we're really thankful for that helped us make that happen. There were a lot of great workshops that we had with GNV Voices and a lot of great community organizations that invited us to their meetings and opened up some discussion time to have their members give us their feedback, and a lot of neighborhood groups as well. We also used a lot of resources that the city already has, like GNV newsletter that goes out weekly, the city website. We've done a lot on there. In terms of with all of these updates that are going on and next steps, we will be continuing to keep things updated. So I kind of have like a email update, not really a server, but just a list of people who from all of this engagement have asked to keep getting updated. So we'll keep doing that as updates come along. We'll keep those people updated as next steps happen. Since they've engaged with us and have asked to keep knowing what's happening with the comprehensive plan. Along with that, we recently did a brand new update to the comprehensive planning page website to make it easier to kind of go through, understand, and access. So it's easier to get to the currently adopted comprehensive plan and easier to access everything that's happening with ImagineGNV, and especially the most recent documents that have been provided from these recent meetings. And we wanted to include some of the pictures from all of the meetings and events that we've gotten to do. So this is just out in the community and all the different forms that has come across in, and just a chance to say thank you to all of those groups, because it really has made a difference in getting all the feedback that we have been able to get. Another part of this is the physical aspect of getting the word out through handout dispersal. So just some numbers on that. Our physical handouts were the trifolds and the timelines. So we were able to get a lot of those out at meetings, leaving them out at a lot of our public facilities. So those, I think, were helpful in getting the word out and getting people to our website and to Conveo to leave feedback. Another tool is public meetings like the one we're at right now. So staff has attended all of these meetings whenever there's been ImagineGNV on the agenda, for sure, and to write down any feedback from those that have come to give public comment, to make sure we're taking that in and recording it and making sure that that's captured, and from board members and also from commissioners when at the different types of meetings. Okay, so this kind of leads into what this effort of why we're doing all of this engagement and how that's being tracked and what it's ultimately resulting in. So everything that was submitted to us, whether it was said to us, at a table that was at a workshop, if it was submitted on Conveo on the website, if it was said to us at a city plan board meeting, or sent to us by email, it's been documented and organized onto this massive spreadsheet for coordinated feedback, evaluation, distribution, and response. So in total, it was 1,458 comments, and that is seen in backup item E. Each and every comment has ended up on this sheet. So not everyone has to read through it. I know it's a couple hundred pages, but I think it's a great resource. Our team is really proud of it. It's a huge undertaking that's not really commonly seen in the comp plan updates that are seen across jurisdictions. So we hope it's something that our community can look at and look back on and be proud of as well. And we think it's also just a great resource in general. A lot of great questions came up, a lot of great points came up from our neighbors and from groups and from commissioners and board members, and each piece was researched by staff, evaluated by staff, and has a staff response. The document is word searchable, which is great as well, so we encourage people to use it. Anyone tuning in, feel free to use it as a resource if you ever have anything you're interested in about the comprehensive plan. It's a great resource. And just something to note about it, not every piece of feedback on it or that we received is 100% comprehensive plan related. As we know, that pops up a lot at meetings that we attend, but every piece of feedback was important. So what that meant to our team is still making sure that, we took it down, took it seriously, and maybe at the time showed how that concern could relate to the comprehensive plan. Like if a concern is about, trash in their neighborhood, or maybe it's about, we heard a lot of stuff that wasn't always directly about a policy or directly about something in the comprehensive plan, but it was very easy to direct them to something that might interest them in the comprehensive plan. But from there, we were able to get them in contact with what could help solve their concern, whether that was ImagineGNV or getting them with the right department in the city to help address their concern. So as you're looking through that backup item, you might see some of that connecting within the staff response as well. So yeah, it's a great tool to help visualize what went into the updates that you see in the new draft. And it also just shows how many people really care about our city and our community and its future. So yeah, really, really proud of those efforts and what it resulted in. But if you have any questions about it, let me know. Would love to talk about it.
All right, Dr. Murmur.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm still formulating some questions, but I just wanted to thank you and Nate again for all your work on this, and especially for coming to the ACLC meeting and engaging with our members and supporters. I see there's been a lot of responses to what the people at that meeting said, and I appreciate that as well. That was one of our better meetings, so thank you.
Yeah, that was a great meeting, and one of the ones where you got such varied feedback that was able to go directly into how we shaped, the chapters that they were concerned about. So, yeah, thank you.
Ms. Bell?
Thank you. This spreadsheet's massive, but it's really cool. Not my comment though. So with what you were saying early on about Senate Bill 180 and what we're currently evaluating, and maybe this is more of a question for the attorney, but if the comp plan is a guidance document, not an implementation document, how could an update be more restrictive? Because like even the definition you provide on the screen early on is that it guides decisions and investments. So how can it be more restrictive?
Yeah, that's a good question. Sean McDermott, Assistant City Attorney. I guess the short answer is, legally speaking, the comprehensive plan is not a guidance document. In fact, it's a regulatory document, and a regulatory document of the highest order, in fact. So all development within a jurisdiction has to be consistent with the comprehensive plan, and that's like a bedrock of Planning 101 that guides, theoretically smart growth throughout the state. So that's just the mechanism that was instituted by the state of Florida back in the 70s or whatever, as the state moved to a more smart growth philosophy, that with ebbs and flows, and debatable how successful that's been. But nonetheless, my short answer turned into a longer answer, where it's not a guidance document, it's a regulatory document with a lot of teeth. So
It's still incredibly short answer for an attorney.
good.
Fair point.
Can you, for my mental benefit, can you provide an example of maybe just like one thing that stuck out to you that we like included in this revision that was more restrictive, just to further elucidate your point?
Staff could, help you illustrate that more so.
Okay.
I would just say from a huge picture perspective, the danger with Senate Bill 180, and just to give some context, is a lot of jurisdictions were moving forward with the good work that staff is doing here, under the hopes that the last legislative session there was pretty broad support for a legislative fix to rein in some of the unexpected consequences of Senate Bill 180. I think, again, pretty broad, like bipartisan support that bill went a little too far than what it was intended, and really hamstrings local governments. All to say, so there was like movement to try to rein that in, and so that's why a lot of jurisdictions continue to work like this, and then that just kind of fell through. And so it's kind of an issue around the state right now. That's why you're kind of really just hearing about it, because we were moving forward like, hopefully that's going to be going away.
When did it go into effect?
I want to say July of
Last year?
Last year?
Last year.
And does it have an enforcement mechanism baked in?
Yes, that's another big
Okay.
issue with that, is it kind of provides the ability, like broad standing. So anytime anybody wants to make land use type challenges, you have to have standing to bring an issue into court. That bill gives standing to, I think it specifies that any residents of the jurisdiction or anybody who owns a business in the jurisdiction can bring a challenge based on that and receive attorney's fees, which is a huge nugget that when legislators want to really make something enforced, they'll put that provision, because you have to have a statutory provision that attorney's fees are recoverable or they're not. And so that's what you'll get a lot of attorneys that will be happy to bring that challenge. So that context and the bigger picture of the city of Gainesville fighting, I don't want to say fighting, but there's a lot of, tension, I would say, between the state and the city in different respects, including bills that involve GRU and whatnot, and many other things. The guidance is that this is not a fight that's necessarily worth it. Also, because legally, that's what we advise is it's we don't have a strong position to argue that an entire rewrite of the comprehensive plan is in no way more burdensome or restrictive than it currently is.
Sure.
And so for all of those factors, I think the guidance is just, for better or worse, we need to hold off until that bill either changes or the time runs.
So the idea is if we did pass something that was more restrictive, then any resident or business owner that was impacted by that more restrictive item, that's the standing they would have to push back against
You
it.
don't even have to be impacted.
Yeah, they
Just be a
don't.
snitch.
You don't even have to be,
Just be a
oh.
snitch.
They can just challenge it, and then it's
Just
up to a
because.
judge to decide.
So the bill itself is the standing, not even being impacted by it.
Oh, correct. It's just the bill grants the standing, and it's articulated in the sense that a resident or business owner.
Wow,
Um,
thank you.
yeah.
That was very helpful.
It's very broad.
Wow.
Very, very
Okay, thank you.
She just asked my question.
Okay. All right. Ms. Moraski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a little bit more about that. Can you explain what you mean by August 2027 timing of this ending? I don't fully understand that part.
Sure. The bill, in kind of a strange fashion, provided two dates, so to speak, that's pertinent to local governments. One was codified into the Florida statutes, and is more of a floating date that is tied to something to the effect of 1 year from the date that an emergency declaration because of a hurricane impacts your jurisdiction. So that's a floating date. In other words, if a hurricane comes and the state declares an emergency in this area, well, that triggers from that point for 1 year that a city can't adopt anything that's more restrictive or burdensome. A second date is not codified. It's just in the body of the bill at the very end that just says, and by the way, you can't do that regardless of hurricanes until October of 2027. So that's a fixed date, and the other one's a floating date. So if nothing changes now, the city's left with waiting till at least October of 2027 and keeping our fingers crossed that no hurricane impacts Alachua County. And by impacts, it doesn't necessarily mean the hurricane even had any impacts here. It's just if an emergency declaration was declared.
And they'll do that if a hurricane impacts a smaller county near us, so they can get more FEMA money.
Right, it's pretty common, unfortunately. So you can see, so the bill is very sweeping in effect, and that's why there was a lot of movement to rein it in a bit. So we'll see what happens.
Ms. Sutton.
So my question, we may get to a little bit later. We sort of saw the schedule so far. Are we going to see like a projected schedule at the end of this presentation? Because my big question is sort of how these two efforts, what we need to transmit by May, and then what we're going to wait and transmit by October, kind of align. And I think the public is going to be really confused that we're going to have two versions and we're going to transmit one ahead of time. And so I think being really clear about the language and the branding and like maybe not calling it, the same name. But I think we need to be careful about that. I also think that May or April, hopefully, transmittal is going to be maybe a bigger lift than you all imagine, because it's not going to be just as simple as making like some text changes to the existing comp plan. I think you're going to have to update the capital improvements, but you're going to have to pull back the mobility fee part of that, which is a significant part of it. I think you're also going to have to update all the population projections, which are kind of embedded throughout. So I think that the intermediate step is actually a decent size lift, and I know you've put a lot of effort into this, and so I'm curious to see the timeline of how we get there and how we communicate that, which I'm sure you all are kind of just brainstorming. But whatever details you have as to how we're going to keep that clear with, the public and with us and with the commission, I would suggest calling it by a totally different name. But it's going to be confusing because I think you're going to have to update your population projections and your, the years and things are going to align more with this than the current one. So I don't know if you have thoughts on that. We may get to more of a timeline for that later in the presentation. We may not. I'm not sure. That's my question.
Yeah, so the presentation doesn't include a more detailed timeline going forward, except to note that this entire rewrite that we're doing is not going to be sent until either October of 27 or, and if something changes with statute before then. However, we do have some different points of the presentation, particularly with the data and analysis section. Might answer some of your questions about how we will be addressing the updates that are required for that evaluation and appraisal report. We will be providing population projection updates with that, and we do have a methodology in place for that. And what else? I think it's a really good point about the branding and the communication. We're not going to be referring to ImagineGNV at all. I don't imagine with the comp plan updates we're doing for the EAR process. That process is going to be updating our currently adopted comprehensive plan, which is not called ImagineGNV. So it's definitely a good point about communication and how to talk about it and things like that. So yeah, if y'all want us to continue going through, we can probably get into a little bit more of the specifics with the data and analysis part after we go through, just briefly, if we want to let Ari talk about the crosswalk documents that were put together. And then, yeah, we can keep talking more about it.
Thanks. Ari Rabinovich, planner with the Department of Sustainable Development. So this is just a look at the crosswalk comparison documents that we created to sort of highlight the changes from the currently adopted comprehensive plan against what was at the time our most up-to-date draft that we completed in November of last year. So the crosswalk document in your backup includes the policy numbers for the current, for the ImagineGNV policy, as well as the verbatim text of that policy, whether or not there is an existing analog in the currently adopted comp plan, and then what the policy number is for the currently adopted analog, if it exists. So we went policy by policy for every chapter of the currently adopted comp plan and just looked through to establish whether or not there has been any parallels between what we've added and what currently exists. And then if you're looking at that backup document, there is an introductory summary that just sort of describes the major thematic changes for each element. And then we also included a chapter 163 of Florida statutes crosswalk. This is just to demonstrate how we've met the requirements of that chapter. So there's going to be the statute with the specific citation and the requirement of that statute, and then a response from staff on how we went about meeting those requirements. So this was a request from the commission, and then this is how we met that request. Oh, and we will ultimately revise this so that it is compared against the newest draft of the comp plan. November is just what we had at the time. That was the most complete version. And I will pass it off to Nate.
Hi, good evening. Nate Chan, planner for sustainable development. I won't be doing a chapter by chapter breakdown. I didn't edit that slide out, but I'll just be giving you an overview of how the comp plan has changed kind of verbally on this slide and the next, from the version that you all saw in January up to today. So it's no doubt that it was a very monumental effort from staff, from multiple city departments, not just sustainable development, but parks, recreation, cultural affairs, public works, GRU, communications, city manager's office, housing, and many others that you see on the screen, and probably some others that are not here, but I try to capture all of those. And I'll get into some of the changes that have been made since the November draft that you all have seen. Thank you so much again for all of your feedback that you've given us. Back in January, we took the time to go by each chapter, take a look at those, and then of course we met with you all in your different sort of areas to see what other changes could be made. So first one being formatting. So we developed new cover pages. The objective titles would help with organization. better bolding and formatting of the document, new naming conventions for the goals, objectives, and policies. So in front of each policy, you might be familiar with how the comp plan refers to it now, which is like policy 1.1.1 of the future land use element. Now it's the FLU, or the future land use policy 1.1.1. So when we're talking about policies, there's now an abbreviation in the front that tells you what element that we're actually talking about. That was a great addition for that. Secondly, we added and removed elements. So I'm happy to report that the latest draft that is before you all, and that one before the commission, is actually 30 pages shorter than the November draft. So it's 170 pages now. It was like a 200 or so page document. So we've cut back on some elements. For example, the introduction chapter that was Gainesville today, that's just an introduction now. Additionally, a big change that we made was condensing the How We Learn chapter into other elements of the ImagineGNV. So as, for example, that's the one where we talk about the public schools and the interlocal agreement that exists. So basically just taking those policies and having them live in the city government chapter, for example, is how we moved that. And that's just from feedback from you all in making that change. So condensing this allows us to keep all of the same content that's in the existing comp plan, just in a shortened form in a different space. Streamlined narratives. We heard a lot that the narratives were too long and they're sort of inconsistent between chapters. So those have been significantly shortened. We had a lot of great feedback on these areas, which we've incorporated as best we could, and we worked with our intern that we had to help us significantly shorten a lot of that and make it concise. So those should be like a page or two now for each chapter. We heard consistently that indicators were confusing for folks, so we decided to remove those. They might be important for the future in terms of how we measure progress, but we're keeping them on the back burner and they're not included in the ImagineGNV for now. We went through Chapter 163 compliance, so trying to check for all of those Florida statute requirements. So Onelia, of course, over at EDA helped us look through all of that and really went through with a fine-tooth comb to make sure that we're hitting all of the statute requirements with ImagineGNV. So we're getting ahead of that work and to make sure that it's statutorily compliant. The data analysis was revised, so with population projections and many, many other things that have been added. I'll let Nick talk a little bit about that. And then finally, just some new idea stuff. So we, of course, at all of the public meetings heard things that inevitably people feel very strongly about, that they want included in the plan. We want to try to include some of that as well. So some examples of additions that we have are talking about art in public places, greenways and trails, thinking about mixed-use neighborhoods and creating more neighborhood-scale community-oriented uses. Additionally, we have re-added certain policies that you all have identified that were missing. So things like urban design standards, like the prohibition on gated residential developments, and reflecting recent changes that the city's done with, like, for example, adding more policy framework for ADUs. So that, in a nutshell, captures some of the new ideas. There's a ton more that I won't cover because it is a very large backup document, but I'll let you kind of take a look at that as we have a little extra time. Just an overview of all of the chapters that I was talking about. So here's a breakdown of ImagineGNV and the 8 chapters that we have now instead of the 10. So going from our city government, cultural identity, where we live, how we build, etc. So those are the chapters, and we have corresponding elements. So the Florida statute requires certain elements of comprehensive plans, and so we took some of your advice in breaking that out to make it very clear what the requirement is for Florida statute. So 8 chapters, 14 elements in total. ImagineGNV contains all of the required elements of a comp plan per Florida statute, in addition to some optional ones, so ones that are not required by statute. That breakdown is on the right for you all to give a look at. And now I'll kick it over to Nick to talk a little bit about the data analysis.
Would you like to ask now?
Yes, if you.
You have a question?
Dr. Murmur.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So you've removed the references to the indicators in the document. I thought the idea was to instead not necessarily remove them, but reference a dynamic document where indicators can be housed and updated. Was that just too
Yes.
unworkable, or?
No, that it's still an option that we can consider. I guess just for the latest draft, they're just pulled out. So we have them, we have the previous draft. If we wanted to create a more dynamic document that measures progress of the comp plan in a more, holding more accountability for how the plan is being implemented, that is something we can do in the future. It's just, it won't live in the actual comp plan.
Okay, so but theoretically we could have a separate dynamic document. So that way we're not just freezing the indicators that were in the previous drafts in amber. We can switch out indicators if new ones, better ones, ones that make more sense come along. But could we still reference that dynamic document and theoretically in the final draft of the comp plan? So instead of having the indicator just saying, please see document X.
I think it can be potentially referenced, like in the introduction. That's something that our team can definitely take a look at.
Yeah, I know there was some interest here and at the commission for that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Good evening, Chair and Plan Board. Nicholas Hill, Planner 3 with the City of Gainesville. And I have the distinct pleasure tonight of talking to you about the data analysis. So the data analysis, for those of you who are unaware, is really the factual foundation for ImagineGNV and provides supporting evidence for the goals, objectives, and policies found therein. It's actually been developed for each element of the comprehensive plan, from the required, such as future land use and housing, to the optional, such as historic preservation or cultural affairs. And to provide data analysis for each element is actually a requirement of 163.3177 of Florida statutes. And in addition to that, provides us really a laundry list of items that we have to hit as part of our data analysis. Meeting each of those requirements and then some is why you see a 204-page tome in your backup titled Data and Analysis. So we really wanted to hit two primary objectives with this data analysis that came directly from feedback that we got from the public. The first was make it more aligned with Florida statutes. And then the second one was make it more cohesive between the different elements, make them similar in formatting, styling, and organization. And we like to think we did just that. So you'll find that each element of the data analysis starts with that cover page. Immediately below it is an introduction, which states the purpose of the element, why it's important, and then an introduction to the data analysis for that particular element. And if you were to dive into the contents itself, you would be able to see that each section is laid out the same as well, with the statutory requirement up top, the data which meets or exceeds that statutory requirement, an analysis of why that data is important, and then the comprehensive planning implications, or how it actually informed the goals, objectives, and policies found within the document. Now, as you can imagine, this was a big lift. 204 pages that are mostly brand new was a lot of work for our staff and a lot of work for our department, our various departments in the city as well. So we'd sincerely like to thank those partners. We're also here for if you have any questions about the data analysis. So thank you so much for this time, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Any questions from the board for our former vice chairman? Seeing none, so I guess we can keep going.
All right, I think we're on to the final slide for today. Just giving an overview of what's to come. So here we are today, May 28th, at the City Planning Board for a discussion item as we planned. Next, of course, we'll continue coordinating with city departments on, updates to the plan that the commission had feedback for back on the 14th. There are a couple items that we'd still like to address. And then, as you had mentioned previously, developing a timeline, including the state year-related deadlines and where the potential adoption hearings would fall within that. We kept to the staff recommendation here, so just an overview of that is we will continue to revise the draft. Hopefully we'll get a final review and recommendation from the plan board, from you all, continue coordinating with Florida Commerce, and then we're still holding on the transmittal and adoption until October 2027, based on what you all have talked about. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that update. Dr. Murmur.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Just in case I forgot to mention you, along with Allison, you came to the ACLC meeting and did a fantastic job, so thank you for that, and also incorporating, I haven't gotten through all of it, but incorporating a lot of that feedback into the document. And then separately, Nick and I had exchanged some emails. He actually reached out to me about incorporating community resource centers and navigators. And I see that that was in there, so thank you very much for being proactive and doing that work.
I would just like to say thank you to city staff. I mean, I know you guys have done a lot of work. It's not great that we can't transmit this thing, you know, that we're kind of in a holding pattern, but I don't want it to be missed that you guys have done just a lot of work in revising this and getting this to a really good place. So you guys should be proud of the work you've put into this, and hopefully at some point, hopefully we don't get a hurricane and then we can transmit this thing. That does bring me to a question for the city attorney. So really our hopes are relying on not getting a hurricane? Like, that seems like a bad bet in Florida.
I think that is a bad bet. Yes, our hopes are relying unless something gets fixed with the bill. And like I said, there's kind of support, so fingers crossed it will get fixed. Otherwise, yeah, you have to wait till the fixed date of October of next year, or hope that a hurricane doesn't happen. And the reasoning, it went too far, but the whole reasoning of that bill was it was generated after the year with several hurricanes in Florida, and the thought was, you know, that redevelopment after an emergency is so important that local governments shouldn't, you know, within the immediate aftermath, use it as an opportunity to say, oh, we're going to implement all these more restrictive requirements because now that the slate's been wiped clean, so to speak, we can see all this good development. So that was the reasoning. I think it's pretty recognized that it went a little too far, and so, yeah, we're just kind of in a holding pattern.
Is there...
especially places that are more vulnerable to hurricanes, like, oh, you can't...
Yeah. I take it the plan is just to wait, but, like, I don't know, like, I'm trying to think of the right question for this, but, like, what do we do if there's a hurricane, I guess, is the thing? Or what do we do if there's a declared state of emergency that resets the clock, right? So that's a whole other year. Is there a plan, you know, contingency plan for all the work that's been done on this in the event of that trigger happening? Or am I asking the wrong person?
Not really. There's not a contingency plan. It's not this is being held up, but also the which I think this board has seen, but the transportation mobility fees structure, that's a big change, and those are all just kind of being held up. I think the practical, the real world fix needs to happen is fixing Senate Bill 180, or otherwise, you're right, it's indefinitely going to run on.
Right.
As a practical matter, the two dates are practically merging anyway.
Right. It's just
if we don't get a hurricane until October, they're the same date.
Right. Dr. Murmur.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to emphasize something that Mr. McDermott had said. There was wide bipartisan support in the normal legislative, the regular legislative session earlier this year. No, in both chambers. And the reason that it died wasn't because it ran into any problems with the committee chair or any serious opposition. It was just they were running out of time to get bills through. So even things that everybody agreed on, just we do not have time to get them through all the committees.
Right.
So this is not. There's a high likelihood that this will be fixed, and March or April.
We'll see if the House
Yeah.
can move a little faster this time. They're not necessarily known for speed when
Yeah,
results are beneficiary.
New House Speaker coming in though.
Mr. Mullen.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to add, I forgot to mention, the question had come up about like how this relates to the proposed transportation changes and things like that. And I can't remember if we had updated you all. And it relates to this whole conversation about, so that the proposed changes to adopt a revised, like a mobility plan with different fees and things like that did come with a comp plan update that you all did review and recommend approval of. That did get sent to the state and was rejected based on this topic that we're talking about here. So, and their response to that didn't necessarily include a ton of detail, but it just listed all the policies and so generally based on that and other cases that we've seen around the state, that's kind of how we came to the conclusion. But yeah, just a little bit more context.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions from the board or? Looks like it.
So it seems like, sorry.
No, go for it. I was just gonna say,
It seems
yeah.
like you don't need any official action or any motion from us tonight. But I would just ask that as you develop the timeline and as you think about, I mean, I know you all have been busting your butts. You've been working really hard on this. A ton of work has gone on to putting all these crosswalk documents together and tracking all the comments, and it really is unbelievable, the backup here. But I would ask you to sort of press on and almost try to get the stuff you've got to do for the year done quickly. Like, I would like to see that timeline happen this year if we can do it in the fall, because we still have to have official transmittal hearings for all of this, which ideally we would have like ahead of October so it's ready to send, you know? So that should really be happening next year, and I think it's going to be really important to kind of have those processes as separate and distinct as possible, not like going to the same meetings. That's going to be really confusing. So I think when you start looking at the timelines and the number of hearings and things, the year process really is going to have to move up, and I'm afraid it's going to be a decent amount of work for you all. So just, I would encourage you to think about that and try to bring us a timeline next month as to what that looks like. Hopefully we'll start seeing that in the fall.
So I can add, in terms of the timeline for adopting this revised plan that we've talked about, our understanding is that even the proposal of a more restrictive or burdensome requirement can lead to challenges based on SB 180. So I don't think we would be bringing any adoption hearings forward before October of 27 or until that, what we just talked
But
about.
not even through the plan board to get it to the city commission in October. Like, we wouldn't even see it before October, you don't think?
We'd have to discuss a little bit more, I think, but I think so far what we've discussed is potentially advertising a change could be concerning, but we can work a little bit more on the specific timeline and bring it back to you, to your point. Yeah.
All right. Any other members of the board have questions or comments about the comp plan update?
Just to
Yeah.
clarify, because I don't know if you were speaking to the ear amendment.
Yeah, the year amendments is what I'm talking about, trying to get done. in
Right,
the
right,
fall.
right. I thought that's what you were
And
asking.
like moving, like, and then, you know, we would have that kind of done, clear,
Yeah.
so that like we could tell the public, this is done. I think it's gonna be really confusing if we're having hearings about two different versions of comp plans at the same time. So I think you've gotta get that through us, you've gotta get it through the city commission before you bring any of this back for official votes. That's my thought, is that if you have one comp plan hearing, you know, transmitting the EAR amendments at the same time the plan board is going through the ImagineGNV in the spring, it's going to be really confusing for people. And so I would encourage you, you're going to have two different versions of the comp plan. Separate those hearings as much as possible. Don't have us seeing this. Like, we see all of it first. So, like, get the ear through us as fast as you can so you can get it through the commission. Then, once that's all done and transmitted, then come back to ImagineGNV. And I guess in my mind, I was thinking that we would be queuing this up to transmit in October. It sounds like you all are actually running behind that timeline. So maybe it's not as big of an issue as I was thinking, but I would still encourage you to move this, like, and I would call it like ear amendments or something. You've got to come up with a name of some sort and just be really clear and just be separate and distinct about the hearings about it.
Yes, agreed. In our discussions of what we've talked about for future timelines thus far, we will not be bringing this back to you before we accomplish the ear adoption. Because, with October of 27 being the time where we can really start to make moves on this again, we're not planning on bringing ImagineGNV back to you in the spring of next year. It's going to be after that. Unless something changes in the meantime, which I wouldn't imagine because we've got to get through the legislative session, and so that wouldn't be until after spring. So we've got to get the ear process done by the end of April, so all of that will definitely happen before we do any hearings on this.
Okay. And then I would just encourage you to think it through and maybe even meet with communications on how you explain that to the average person, because it's going to confuse people. And everyone who's participated in this and is on Allison's listserv is going to be really confused. And so having clear communication to them about why we're doing that and what's different, and that we're using some of this data and analysis, but I think people are going to be confused. I'm nervous about it, which is probably clear by now.
Would there be anything troublesome about just referring to it in public communications on your listserv when we talk about it, requesting, suggesting to the city commission when they talk about it, just calling it an interim comp plan? I mean, people should be able to understand what that means.
I think you got to give the context of the Senate Bill 180, for people, like, because
you say because it's dentist.
But this is the thing. It's true, because I think that what you've gotten a lot of feedback, and it's been a great effort. And you don't want those people to feel like they were only heard for show, which is a common complaint in the city, which I think is unfounded personally. But this would give some life to that criticism. And so I think as much as probably on Harvey Ward, to be honest, to communicate this, the mayor, to communicate this with a proper context. Hey, we're doing this. This is just a thing we have to do. This is not the thing that we got all the feedback on. We can't do that because the state won't allow us to do that for a little bit. I mean, that's a pretty, in Gainesville, if you tell people the state won't allow you to do it, well, we have a lot of experience with that. So I think they do understand that. But it just has to be communicated to people so they don't feel like this whole process was a waste of their time.
Yeah, absolutely. Makes sense.
Yeah, and to your point, maybe that heavy lifting should be done by the electeds.
Oh yeah,
Instead of putting it on
that's what they're there for. Supposedly, I mean, they pride themselves on their communication, so this is definitely
That's Brian on TikTok.
This is a good opportunity for them to use those communication skills. So. Can we move on to member comment? We have one.
I do. I don't know if staff has looked at HB 399 or 803. Can we get an update on maybe where the city is thinking on that? And some of those things are due to roll in July 1st. So if we want to provide compatibility requirements and things to being able to allow like essentially manufactured homes everywhere, we need to like be seeing that very soon at the plan board. Also, obviously, with SB 180, to be careful about what we do. The other issue is the glazing requirements potentially being overridden. So I'm just curious, and Sean, I'm glad you're here because maybe you've looked at this, maybe you haven't, but like, are we going to be seeing something next month to address this? I haven't been paying super close attention to the commission. I don't know if it's on their radar, but I would like to see us look at it and compatibility and what we're able to put into the code.
So I followed all that except for the glazing requirements. How would these?
So the state's trying to like override local glazing requirements so that
So
you would only be able
also
to allow, you would only be able to require 15%.
And that is.
We have significantly higher requirements, particularly in transect zones.
Well, I'd
Good
like to
afternoon.
introduce our interim
Big guns.
director, Ralph Hilliard, to.
Perfect time
address some
to
of
introduce
those.
myself. My name is Ralph Hilliard. I'm the interim director for sustainable development. First, I want to say we want to thank Forrest Edelton for all the service that he's provided to the city. We will miss all of his depth of experience working with his great staff that he's put together for you all. To Ms. Sutton's point, one of my first things I've been looking at since being here is all of that legislation that's coming out, and some of it is due like July 1st.
I think.
So we probably will not be bringing you anything between now and then. We have some people that are going to a conference here at the end of this month in Jacksonville, especially our building department folks, to try to gather some more information about how we're going to handle those issues. Not only the glazing, there's stuff about gas stations and signage that we have to deal with. So that legislation definitely supersedes anything in our code, and we'll move forward with doing what it says. I'm not sure we will make code changes for that right away. Might be something that we'll have to roll into code changes in the future, but we're definitely looking at that. There's even more coming for January of 2027, so there's like 3 major bills that we're looking at, trying to figure out how to make sure we incorporate that and not run afoul of the law.
Yeah, we're definitely looking at it all. We could, if you. Yeah. We could potentially, we can definitely bring you more information as we have it for sure, and we're trying to work through each individual item.
It may be helpful, and we've suggested this before, where there may be text amendments, to bring it to us as a discussion item, topic by topic, before you go down a path and like end up drafting a whole staff report and having, you know, like that's what the plan board's sort of for, is to be like, you know, a recommending body and to be a sounding board on some of these things. So even if you have a list of topics just for discussion items, I would encourage you to bring them to us. It doesn't have to be fully baked.
Right.
All right. Anybody else? Okay, then. Next meeting of the plan board will be June 25th, 2026. And with that, this meeting is adjourned.